Our movie begins in 1940 with former Peaky Blinders gang leader Thomas Shelby, who has decided to leave everything behind and live a gypsy life in the woods. His friend Dogs stays with him and tells him that he went to Birmingham and saw someone from their past. She asked him if he knew what happened to the great Tommy Shelby, the gypsy king whose name used to shake the world. He told her that Tommy had isolated himself from the world and was now writing a book. With his words, Dogs tries to pull Tommy back to the past and remind him who he is, but Tommy just stays silent and doesn't answer. He goes back to writing his book, which chronicles his entire history. Suddenly, he hears a sound and can't focus, so he goes out to see where it's coming from. He feels uneasy, and even when he's alone, the hallucinations won't leave him. They follow him everywhere. He finds a scarf hanging on a branch and takes it with him. He notices that the ghosts he sees are sending him a message. He writes that he's had another vision, and it feels as real as reality, not just imagination. We see him standing in front of his brother Arthur's grave, and we learn he died 2 years ago. At that moment, Dogs comes to him and tells him his sister Ada has come to see him with bad news. He goes to her and asks, "What's the news?" She tells him that last night their factory was bombed and all the workers on the evening shift were killed. He asks her, "Why did you come to me? You're a member of parliament now. You deal with these problems." She tells him that when people have this kind of problem, they need him. They don't go to an MP. He tells her that he's also living in a special kind of war inside his head. She reminds him that he has a real family, not just ghosts he sees, and asks him, "When was the last time you spoke to your children?" He replies that he was never the ideal father to them and was always harsh. She tells him about them. Charles is now fighting in North Africa, and his second son, the gypsy boy Duke, is running the Peaky Blinders gang and has become a version of you and Arthur combined. Then she begs him to come back with her, visit the family graves, and rein in Duke before something happens to him or the police arrest and execute him. He gives an out-of-the-box response, telling her that he sees things, and the situation has worsened since Arthur's death. He's starting to lose his mind and can't stop the hallucinations. He then leaves her and walks away. In Birmingham, we see Duke Shelby, Thomas's illegitimate son, as he and his gang storm an armory. No one can stop them. When a man stands up and shouts for someone to confront them, Duke goes up to him and says, "Listen to me. What were you saying?" They tell Duke he doesn't matter and that he's under arrest. Duke makes it clear to them that from now on, they should consider themselves the local police, and they're currently working, so if they don't mind, they should let them get on with their jobs without interference. He signals to his associate, who gathers the civilians around. Duke threatens them. Anyone from now on who gets in their way while they're working will have their house found and their whole family beaten. He finishes with, "That's an order from the Peaky Blinders." The man comes back to Duke and says, "You Peaky Blinders might be able to scare the chief of police, but you can't scare me. I've been through worse in the war. I've seen things you couldn't even imagine." Duke acknowledges he's a brave man, but a stupid one. He hits him with his cane. His men grab and beat him, and Duke orders him to stay down on the ground, telling him he picked the wrong person to talk to. Then he and his men leave, taking all the weapons and ammunition they need. When they return to the pub, they tell Duke someone is waiting for him outside. It's John Pict, one of the traditional politicians who rose to prominence during World War II. Duke sits with him and waits to hear why he's there. Pict explains his job is to take the money gangs make and integrate it into the British economy, giving them a 20% cut. Duke agrees to the offer, without a second thought. Pict patronizes him and tells him to find someone more senior to talk to. John tells Duke he came to connect him with his father to make a deal, and that he wouldn't deal with a kid like him. Duke pulls his gun, uses it to break the windows of Pict's parked car and says, "I'm the head of the gang now. You talk to me." Pict then tells him that since he's in charge, he needs to ask him first if he's ready to participate in a betrayal that will end the war in Germany's favor. Duke clarifies that he has no political loyalties. He only lives for himself. Pict replies that he'll be testing his loyalty in the coming days. We see Thomas back at his house. He feels he's not alone, so he loads his gun and starts looking around. He hears a sound, goes towards it, and finds a woman standing there. He tells her no one enters his house without permission, but she says she's there to deliver a specific message. She approaches his writings, but he stops her, not letting her touch them. He focuses on her features and realizes she's the same woman from his recurring visions. She notices his confusion and that he's about to recognize her. She clarifies she wasn't sent by herself. She tells him she lost her life long ago, and sometimes she communicates with her sister in dreams, hearing her voice. She's here with a message from her. He deduces her sister is Zelda, with whom he had a relationship long ago, and father Duke. She confirms this and introduces herself as Kara. She draws his attention to the fact he has a son by her sister. He interrupts, saying he knows very well who Duke is and what he's become because he left him his kingdom. She corrects him, saying he abandoned her and her son, knowing full well he wasn't ready. She tells him he's living in memories of the past, in a house haunted by the ghosts of people who lost their lives because of him. She tells him writing won't pull him out of his state. He doesn't reply and asks her to get to the point. What's the message she came for? She says his son is in trouble, working with people who will destroy their family. When she asks for his help, he tells her he can't help her because he's simply retired and won't return. She tells him, "If you come back to save your son, my sister and I will help you find the peace you've been searching for." Dogs comes, and Thomas informs him that Kara is now their guest. Thomas later speaks with someone, telling them she is a gypsy queen, warning them of her danger, but they don't listen. Elsewhere, Ada goes to see her nephew, Eric, trying to pull him back from the path he's on. She threatens him indirectly, telling him his family is finished, his father has lost his mind, and he's all that's left. But he's all talk and no action. She tells him he's handsome and looks just like his father, but he's missing something, and without it, he'll get hurt. When he asks what it is, she explains that at the end of the path he's chosen, he'll be in a coffin, and no one will care about his funeral, because it will be missing the same thing he's missing, and doesn't realize: his family. The next day, she goes to Charlie and tells him Duke stole weapons from a government depot, using written permission from the Birmingham police. She says she'll go herself tomorrow to handle it. He tells her to save herself the trouble because no one will listen to her. There's only one man who can stop Duke, and he's currently retired from the world, writing a book that won't help or harm anyone. We see Thomas writing in his book about his suffering after fighting in World War I. Although he returned physically unharmed, the war has remained in his mind forever. He can't forget what he lived through. He describes feeling tormented, unable to continue his life, yet unable to completely lose his soul. As soon as he finishes writing, he finds Kara standing before him wearing the red scarf. He asks, "Where did you get that?" She says she was walking and found it placed on his brother's grave. She tries to engage him, asking if he truly isolated himself as people say, but he rebuffs her and refuses to answer. She then confesses she is actually the spirit of Zelda, having stolen her sister's body to talk to him. He doesn't believe her. She tells him the red scarf belonged to his daughter, Ruby, and she said she left it hanging on a branch for him. She gives him a sign by repeating what he said to his brother at the grave, and he finally believes her. She asks him to help their son. He says he can't help him because he's changed. He's not the Tommy Shelby of old. Meanwhile, Ada fights her nephew in her own way. She gathers people around her, tells them Duke Shelby stole all the weapons from a government factory, and asks those who witnessed it to come forward and testify against him. She promises to protect them as an MP, vowing to stop him. On the other side, we see John Pict introducing Duke to the Member of Parliament, Virgil, the deputy leader of the British Fascist Union. Virgil speaks with Duke, saying he's here to see for himself if Duke is suitable for the job. He starts asking, "How will you secure the money for us?" Duke explains he has 3 boats at the dock used for smuggling goods and weapons, which are difficult to search. He assures Virgil that the people at the dock are his family and loyal to him, so he shouldn't worry. However, Virgil asks for a guarantee, as he'll be handling 70 million. He hints that gypsies find it hard to provide guarantees or give up their family. Duke denies having a family, claiming he is alone. At that moment, John Pict interjects, telling Virgil that before Duke came, he had told him the truth. Virgil is surprised and asks, "The truth about what you told me?" We understand that John is a double agent, and this was the test he was using to assess Duke. Suddenly, Duke kills Virgil, passing the test and proving he truly has no loyalty to any political nation. John then sits with him and explains he works with people of high political influence, including members of the royal family. He guarantees Duke his protection and agrees to follow the same plan. Starting tomorrow, he is to gather the boats, take them to Liverpool, and collect the money. We return to Kara, now appearing as Zelda. She asks Thomas if he wants to know what his brother told her. She tells him Arthur said he wasn't alone that day. Thomas was with him, but he doesn't blame him for what happened. Thomas tries to silence her, but she continues, telling him the whole world thinks his brother took his own life, but that's not the truth. Thomas flashes back to that fateful day. He tells her Arthur stole his car and crashed it while under the influence of opium. When Thomas saw him from a distance, he didn't recognize him and started hallucinating, mistaking him for the devil. Before he could get close enough to realize it was his brother, he grabbed his gun and killed him. Since that moment, Thomas has blamed himself for the incident, holding himself responsible for Arthur's death. She consoles him, saying it was an accident, and he couldn't save him, just as he couldn't save Ruby. But the one he can save now is his son. The next day, he wakes up and she's gone. He sees the scarf hanging on the bedpost. Unsure if her presence was real or just a figment of his imagination, he takes it, returns it to Arthur's grave, and decides to end his isolation and return to his life of crime to save his son. After Duke completes the deal John asked for, John comes to him and says there's someone they need to eliminate. He tells him that last night, during an air raid, a member of the fascist party was in a shelter, and his Aunt Ada was there too. He explains she is gathering witness statements against Duke for the armory robbery, and plans to hand them over to the military police today. He hints that if she does that, she'll put Duke's neck in a noose. He gives Duke a choice. Either that happens, or he takes the 70 million. Duke understands what is required. He needs to kill his aunt. He simply nods in agreement. John respects his decision and tells him not to let him down. That same day, Duke goes to watch Ada. His gun is ready. In moments, he would finish it, but he can't bring himself to do it. She's not just anyone. She's the last of his family left besides his father. How can he end her life? When Duke hesitates, John, having anticipated he might back out, appears before Ada, and prepares to do it himself. Duke screams at the top of his lungs to warn her to run, but it's too late. John kills her and takes the witness statements she was going to deliver. He tells Duke he let him down and disobeyed orders. Duke sits beside his aunt's body, grieving, blaming himself for not saving her in time. At that same moment, we see Thomas on his way to the city. Suddenly, he asks dogs to stop the car. He sees a vision of Ada. In that instant, he understands something has happened to her because he only sees the dead. He breaks down and vows revenge for his sister. He arrives in Birmingham. As a soldier gives him the grim news of a shooting and Ada's death, Thomas steels himself to avenge her. Dogs tries to stop him, saying it won't help, but Thomas doesn't listen. He leaves Dogs and walks alone through the streets as people welcome his return. He goes to the pub, stops the music, and announces he's looking for his son, Duke. A drunk soldier, not knowing who he is, confronts him. He threatens that if Thomas doesn't restart the music, he'll make him dance a dance he'll never forget in front of everyone. Thomas's only response is silence. Someone recognizes him and warns the others who they're dealing with. The soldier scoffs, "Who's that supposed to be?" and starts cursing, with others joining in mockery and laughter. Thomas finally speaks. "Someone explain to them who I am." The soldier, unimpressed, pulls his gun and repeats his threat to start the music and get ready to dance. Thomas calmly says, "That's exactly what he asked for." He pulls a grenade from his pocket, pulls the pin, and tucks it into the soldier's clothes. Everyone flees. The grenade explodes. Having made his point and reintroduced himself, he asks again for his son's location. After the recent display, no one hesitates to tell him. Thomas finds Duke and starts beating him, furious that after years of theft, he's now killed a member of their family. Duke confesses he didn't kill Ada. It was what was asked of him, but he couldn't do it. He blames Thomas for abandoning him and then coming back to judge him. Thomas ignores him and continues the beating. Finally, Duke tells him John was the one who killed her. Thomas goes to the morgue. He asks Dogs, who meets him there, to leave him alone. The man who killed his sister will be coming soon to kill him before he can get to him. Dogs listens and leaves. Thomas approaches his sister's body, lamenting that everyone else has lost their lives except the one who most wishes for it, meaning himself. He blames himself for not going back with her when she asked. She'd still be alive, and he could have protected her. He confesses to her that he was the one who killed Arthur. We discover it wasn't an accident or suicide. Arthur was drunk, and Thomas, in a hysterical rage, killed him because he wanted to free himself from his brother's control and influence. He vows to her that the guilt he carries will be atoned for and compensated with good. As predicted, he walks out and finds John waiting for him, gun in hand. A shootout ensues. They take cover in a stable. John reveals he's aligned with the Nazis but claims his goal is noble, to end the war through money, not bombs. If everyone is rich, no one needs to die. Thomas points out his gun holds 30 rounds, and his ammo is almost gone. John reacts by firing into the air, spooking the horses, using them as cover to escape. Unable to catch him, Thomas decides to reclaim his former glory. He mounts his black horse and rides through his kingdom. People stare in awe, unable to believe he has finally returned. We see Kara sitting with Duke. She tells him his mother's spirit visits her sometimes. Duke interrupts, saying it's not the time for gypsy magic stories, but she assures him his father is coming to save him, and they will rule the Peaky Blinders together. This is his chance. When he asks, "My chance for what?" she recalls that when he was a boy, he said he would be king, and everyone laughed. Now is the time for him to truly become king, and this time, no one will dare laugh because he will be with his father, carrying out his orders. She hands him a bullet with his father's name on it. He understands her meaning. She explains, this is what Thomas himself wants. Peace. She made him a promise to fulfill his request. When Thomas's life ends, Duke will take up the mantle and become the Gypsy King. She tells him this was his mother's wish, but he must first be ready. Soon after, Thomas comes to see her. She tells him she spoke with Duke, who agreed to help him get John together and avenge Ada. Thomas attends Ada's funeral. He's not just saying goodbye to his sister, she was the last of his family. He vows not to let her death go unpunished. That night, John contacts Duke. He says, "I know I let you down before, but I can help you now. Tommy Shelby is on his way to you, and he knows where you are." When John asks for the price of this valuable information, Duke says he only wants the same deal as before, the 70 million. Meanwhile, Stagg, the head of the Liverpool docks, comes to Thomas and gives him a map of the entrances and exits of John's location. Stagg asks what could possibly be so important in that warehouse that it would bring the great Tommy Shelby back to power right after his sister's funeral. Thomas is candid. It's a man he needs to get rid of today, before tomorrow. It's also a weapon that could make them lose the war. If that happens, no one will get medals. No one will ever know about it. But they'll have done some good for the country. Stagg reminds him he used to say the war was none of his business. Thomas replies, "It is now." Stagg supports his decision, telling him it was his war from the start. Since he disappeared, the Nazis have been systematically wiping out his gypsy clan, one by one. Thomas calls his son over and introduces him to Stagg. Stagg remarks he's heard stories about Duke and he's even worse than his father. But Thomas defends him, saying there's good in him. He's not cursed like them. Thomas trusts he will be a worthy successor. Thomas outlines his plan to capture John during the deal. The next day, he writes in his book that his eldest son, Duke, is meant to be his successor, inheriting the dark side of his life. But tonight, he will face a true test, revealing whether he can write the final chapter of his story or let him down. At night, he asks Kara to read his palm. She tells him his heart has been broken twice, and he's on the verge of losing his mind. She continues, seeing a war ahead of him. He survived World War I, but it changed him. He says, "You've only told me the past. Now I want you to tell me the future. What will happen today?" She tells him he will get what he has always wanted most. He will finally feel peace after years of suffering. He pulls out his gun, revealing he's known her intention since the first day she arrived. He says she was the one who asked Dogs at the beginning about Tommy Shelby's fate. He recalls that Polly once told him if a black crow comes to his door, it means his end is near. He admits he never thought he'd meet another like Polly until he saw her. She tells him what happens today will be one of two things. Either he will kill him, or he will kill him. We see them begin the operation, moving towards the Liverpool docks. Duke goes to John, explaining the plan in detail. John translates for his Nazi men, then gives a Hitler salute. Meanwhile, Thomas decides to go through a tunnel that hasn't been used in years. As he does, memories of the horrors of World War I flood back. He fights to control himself and pushes forward. Suddenly, the tunnel collapses, trapping him. Elsewhere, John drinks and celebrates with Duke, believing he has betrayed his own clan and handed over his father. Stagg waits for Thomas's boat at the agreed time. Just before the clock strikes 12, Thomas's story is about to be rewritten. He struggles to free himself from the collapsed tunnel, finally managing to escape. At the docks, the Nazis open fire on Stagg and his men. Stagg escapes by diving into the water. They fire wildly, trying to hit him. As the clock strikes exactly 12, Thomas detonates explosives on the boats before they can reach the Nazis, killing them all. John realizes Duke betrayed him and set him up. He raises his gun at Duke, asking, "What did you do?" Duke replies coolly that he played the role of a traitor. He was supposed to betray his father, but he followed his heart and did the right thing. He provokes John, telling him his father abandoned him for the second time, leaving him alone to face him. Before he can finish, an explosion rocks the warehouse. Thomas arrives with his clan, and a massive battle erupts between them and John's remaining men. When Duke sees his father, he asks, "Why were you late? Where were you?" Thomas tells him he's here to fulfill his mother's wish and save him, asking him to save the questions for later. Thomas readies a grenade and throws it, destroying the Nazis' weapons. John tries to escape in his car, but Thomas blocks his path, standing directly in front of him. He doesn't fire a single shot, letting John shoot him instead. Thomas then takes a shot himself, killing John. Thomas stands in front of the car speeding towards him, surrendering to his fate. At the last moment, Duke leaps and pushes him out of the way. As they celebrate their survival, they realize Thomas is severely wounded. Unable to stand, Thomas asks Duke to give him a mercy killing, like they do for a horse, and end his life. Duke holds him, placing the gun in his hand, but says he can't do it. Thomas insists that to become king, he must be capable of more than this. He begs him to end his suffering. At that moment, a gunshot rings out. Duke fulfills his father's wish. Thomas Shelby dies, finally finding the peace he had sought his entire life. He leaves Duke the legacy of the Peaky Blinders to carry on. The film ends,